Let's sit down and listen to records. Smell the cover, read all the verses. Tell me about your favorites on Vinyl and Vision.
Hello, and thank you for tuning in to the latest episode of Vinyl and Vision. This is episode 22 with my very special guest, Peter Prescott, formerly of Mission of Burma, currently in the band Minibeast. Minibeast is a killer band. Absolutely top of the food chain live performance. I strongly encourage anyone that's listening to this now, go see them when you can, whenever you can, wherever they are. They do touring. I don't know what their touring plans are currently, but you could probably visit their website, minibeast.net. Find them on Facebook, Instagram, Bandcamp, Spotify, and all other streaming platforms to listen to the music. I strongly encourage you to pick up the records, like these here. Their latest release is actually a double record, Ism, Volume Silver and Volume Gold. It's very cool. That's the silver vinyl here. And you are currently listening to a track off of that silver record called Handed. At the end of the episode, we're also featuring a short clip of the song Your Exact Location. Those are two of my personal favorites off that record. And I hope you like them too. Trying not to make this intro too long, but just have to say thank you to Peter for making the time to sit down with me and do this interview, and I'm actually extremely excited to share it with you all. It was a pretty amazing conversation. I think my build-up to finally sit down with him kind of wore a little heavy on me, and I got a little anxious about it, and I don't know. I feel like I didn't maybe have all my... I wasn't in complete focus for the interview, and I kind of slipped out of it for a little bit here and there. So I got to thank Peter for basically doing all the heavy lifting in this conversation. He's a very well-spoken man and very thoughtful. Shared a lot of really great gems with us today. So I hope you like it. Just want to say thank you to all the listeners. We're hoping for a really prosperous year. I have to say a very big thank you and a job well done to Cory Cascella. He is my new podcast support and overall tech guru, and he will be helping me with all the episodes for the foreseeable future, and it's great to have him on, and looking forward to doing some more episodes with him. So thank you to you all. Please do all the things you do with the internet. Like, share, subscribe, comment, and review. That's another big one, huh? Yeah, review. Get the podcast some more exposure. Hopefully, get it stepping up in those ranks, which we could definitely use. So, thank you very much, everybody. And without further ado, here is my talk with Peter Prescott. Let's try it again.
There it is.
That's going to be loud. So now this is a very airy record.
A very what?
Very airy record.
Yeah.
Like, there's going to be a lot of...
to start off with that is hilarious to me.
And it goes on for a while. I mean, like, I can see the groove of that first track and how it's the majority of the first side. So it's 46 minutes long, approximately, the entire record.
That sounds right.
And this song must be 10 minutes.
Something like that.
Huh. So now, aside from the look of it, because you were saying how the first time you saw this record was in a record store and just the colors...
In Maine, yeah.
In Maine.
Yeah, Burma was playing up there.
Oh, cool.
And we'd always go to record stores, and I didn't know what it was. So, occasionally I would buy stuff because it looked cool.
Yeah. But that's cool. So, and what year was that, do you think?
80.
80?
Yeah.
Oh, cool.
Something like that.
So 80. So this came out in 72. So that's not too long after it came out. Did you ever get an opportunity to see Noi? I feel like I'm saying that wrong. Noi?
No, you are.
Is that right?
That's the correct pronunciation, as far as I know.
Okay.
Noi. Yeah. Weirdly enough, I did.
You did?
Yeah, which is insane that I did. Burma played sort of after we reformed. We did several European tours, and usually they were connected, like they always need to be, to some kind of a festival, so you get some fat paycheck for the festival that financed the rest of the tour.
Right.
This time, I think we might have played in All Tomorrow's Parties, which was a festival in England that we did several times. But this was at Primavera,
Okay.
which is in Barcelona, Spain. And it's maybe 3 or 4 nights, and it wasn't on our night, but a version of Noi. Apparently, I don't know the full story, but my understanding was it was 2 guys,
Right.
basically, and the drummer has that insanely identifiable, almost like robotic drumming style.
Right. The
Really
4/4.
spare, no rolls, hardly hitting any cymbals. you
Right.
know?
Yeah.
And apparently the guitar player and the drummer, after they put out these records, despised each other. Now, I don't know that that's true. That's my understanding.
There was some disharmony between them, for sure.
Apparently.
Yeah, like they've even had arguments, I guess, as far as like repressing things in the future and
I think
releasing
so.
their 4th posthumous record, I guess.
Yeah, the drummer has since died.
Well, he died in 2008, but even before his passing away, that they had a 4th record that they never got to release, basically because I don't think that they could reach any agreement.
Agree on it.
Yeah. So.
Oh, that's amazing.
Yeah, it's obviously there's some serious like bad blood between them.
I know, such a shame, because they're such a unique sound, and it was,
Right.
I think that when there's bass or other sounds on these records, I think the guitar player played it. I'm not sure, but I think so. So I don't know what they called it, but the guitar player, a bass player, and Steve Shelley from Sonic Youth played a noise set. And like I said, it wasn't on the night that we played, so I didn't have to think about anything. I was pretty excited about seeing any version of it.
Yeah.
And so, it's Barcelona. The sun is going down. There's enormous stage, like acres of people, and the sky is kind of purple. I think they might have started out with that song.
Really?
And Shelley knew how to play that really simple, unadorned beat. Mm-hmm. The bass player played simple, and the guitarist was the guy.
Yeah.
So it sounded exactly like it.
Wow.
And one of the best things I've ever stumbled into at a festival ever.
I bet. Yeah.
I think when we got the show on the other night, I'm not sure if I even knew that there was going to be anything like that.
Yeah.
So when I heard it, I was like, Noi? So yeah.
Wow.
It was great.
That's great.
Yeah.
Did you often, like being on tour, especially with Mission of Burma, like get the opportunity to see bands that you have always wanted to see, or?
Yeah, it came up a few times.
Yeah.
I think the first time we went over, Wire was on the bill. It was a shellac curated show, so lots of Chicago bands. But on the night we played, I think it was us, Wire, and Cheap Trick.
Cheap Trick?
Yeah, because Albini loves Cheap Trick.
Oh, okay.
He just loves Cheap Trick.
Wow.
And it was kind of funny because there's lots of older musicians there, but I don't think anybody as straight as Cheap Trick.
Yeah, I bet.
So it was kind of strange when they, I think they might have ended the whole festival. It might have been the last day.
They seem like they would be a closer for sure.
Yeah. And I dug them. They're a cool band, but they felt a little bit out of the rest of the group.
Yeah. Well, that's the problem with being, I guess,
classic rock.
Being a classic rock band, but being admired by a guy that's very well known for being noise rock.
Exactly.
It's just like, he might love them, and I'm sure there are other people that are fans of the noise rock scene that will also appreciate them, but not necessarily a lot of them.
No, especially because, there was a lot of kids at this festival. And, to them, they were probably, I mean, Burma was old to them, so.
Yeah.
Cheap Trick probably seems like, from the 50s or something.
Right, yeah. But at least they can get on board with Burma sound,
Right,
even as old as it may have been.
We were right in the center of everything.
Right. Yeah.
So, there's been tons of bands I've seen that I probably wouldn't have if not for that.
Yeah. Yeah, they didn't seem like a touring band, really. They didn't seem like they got around much.
Who's that?
Noi, right?
I don't think they were.
I don't think so either.
I don't think they, Yeah, I mean, when I think of German rock stuff, and Kraftwerk is probably the top of the pile in terms of being well known.
Yeah. But yeah, actually, did you know? So the two main band members of Noi was Klaus Stinger and Michael Rother, and that's me saying their names in English.
What's that?
I think that has a more of a Germanic pronunciation.
Right,
but I'm not getting
but Rother is the way I said it. Yeah.
But so the two of them, and they were originally members of Kraftwerk.
I believe they were. Yeah.
I guess that's where they met, and they both left Kraftwerk together after the first record. Yeah. And then went on to form this band.
Yeah, so. I think I get the impression that wing of the German rock community was pretty small.
Yeah.
Oh
yeah, I bet. Because electronic music too. I mean, like Kraftwerk was pretty much the forefathers of that genre of music.
Pretty much.
And I mean, where else would you go if you happen to be in that band and enjoyed doing that style of music? I mean, where else can you go but create your own music that is kind of in a similar vein?
Right.
They weren't very well heralded, I don't think either, really.
I think it's only, they got a little bit of a bump in awareness with Stereolab. Because Stereolab is the only band I've ever heard that somehow adopted this vibe at times.
It's not. Yeah, now that you say that, I can clearly hear the similarity.
I mean, it was an influence I could tell, but they had so many influences that they pulled in. Kind of breathy girl pop, like Jane Birkin or something like that. But Noi was, I'm pretty sure, was one of those influences. And I never felt like they mimicked them or imitated them, but they were the only group that I've heard that I can think of. There was a couple bands on the label that they were on for a while, Too Pure.
Yeah, okay.
That had a slightly similar vibe, but Stereolab was the only one that just like got that sort of like, human played but robotic vibe, just like, and also this music is interesting because it doesn't sound like a song doesn't really start or end. It begins, and then it goes for a while. And then it kind of fades out.
It's all transitional.
There's no announcement about, the various portions of the song.
Right.
It just sort of is a straight line that, like, they let you into and then they take you out of.
Yeah. It's very interesting music, yeah, and just the way that they did that, I wasn't even really thinking about that. But this might fit along into the realm of what you were saying earlier about how like the majority of the music you put on in like at home, like while you're just kind of sitting around, is what was the word you used? Landscaping.
Background,
it's background
ambient,
music. Yeah, ambient. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Because there's not a lot of like so I listened to this a lot at home on my own while I was doing my own things, primarily on earbuds, just to kind of get a grasp of the record, because this record is actually fairly new to me.
Yep.
I got turned on to Noi, I think maybe like last year.
Yep.
Asked a good friend for a couple recommendations, and this came up. I was just like, okay, I'll take a listen. And yeah, it's just it never, I don't think it seeped in because I didn't sit with it long enough to really kind of grasp what was going on, because it's fairly background music. It's fairly...
It is. It's almost like intentionally faceless.
Yeah.
You know, there's not... It's almost like... and I got to admit, it was sort of my introduction in a formal way to that idea, that music doesn't need like big,
intro,
heralded changes or intros that are sort of announcing the song or a huge ending. Like you could remove all of that stuff and you'd still have music.
Right.
And, a lot of people would say, yeah, it's boring music, but either that or you could say, well, it's music that isn't, it's not grabbing your brain. It's just sort of seeping in.
Exactly. Seeping in is a good way to think about it, because like it's almost like a cancer in a way. It seeps into the body.
Disease.
You don't know it's there until it takes over.
Right.
And then like only after like a good few listens do I find like that moments of the songs trigger inside my mind. It's just like, oh, this is that part. Okay, it's coming up, and you look forward to it almost.
I'm just in love with that idea. And obviously, in any kind of a formal rock band, that's almost like oil and water. It's almost like, it just doesn't mix, or one thing destroys the other. Right. I personally don't feel that has to be so. I don't. I guess there's a million different places where I sort of got into this idea of like, trying to mix these things. One of them was techno and hip hop in especially in the 90s, but actually a great example is Public Enemy, the first couple Public Enemy records. Yeah. Which have so many sounds like crammed into this universe. Mm-hmm. But basically all you're really focusing on is the vocal and the beat. Right. And all that other stuff is sort of icing, decoration. Yeah. Right. That sometimes interacts with the beat or the vocal and sometimes doesn't. Mm-hmm. So I think I was also affected by those things. In the 90s, I remember hearing, and I still got like a batch of techno and sort of electronica vinyl. Yeah. Maybe that big. It's not a million records, but there were some that I remember hearing them that kind of blew me away because they did that thing. Yeah. These guys tend to be more serene. Yeah. Easy listen, kind of like... Yeah. Yeah. Because I can imagine that some of it can be a little grating, a little jarring almost. Well, some of the other style of like electronica or house or techno that you might listen to. Sometimes that is less background and more foreground.
Yeah, yeah. Big beats, stuff like that. Yeah, yeah. Yeah. That's really grabbing, I think.
Yeah, it is.
This is just way more serene than that. Yeah. Nice flowing into and out of songs or...
Hey, some people think of it as this far away from like New Age or something, know?
Yeah.
I could almost see that.
Yeah, I guess so. I don't have a lot of experience with New Age, but I can see how that could...
Neither do I, but like there's so many records that I buy that are 50s and 60s kind of like loungy stuff, like that Cha-Cha record.
Is that your personal stash there? That's for yourself?
No, actually, that's what I'm selling, but that's like not a white guy cha-cha-cha record. That's a Cuban record from the 50s.
Oh, okay.
And like when you put that down low,
yeah,
it has a similar kind of pleasant, flowy vibe. It's just a little bit more filled with angst and joy and people shouting.
Yeah, yeah.
But if you keep it low, it has a similar effect.
Weird.
You know?
Okay. Because you say that this is Cuban. My family's Bolivian. And I think that this is one of those strangest things that I've never thought about until recently as an adult, was that when I was a kid, my parents and their family, like, so their, my uncles and aunts and my grandparents would host these parties that would rage on well into the like early morning, like literally like 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock in the morning. And they would be heavy drinking and really loud music, and they would be dancing. Like, I don't know what style of dance it is, because I've never really shown any interest, but I was just like, why? Like, my family is crazy. Like, all these guys are just like losing their minds, and they're like really, like, they're sweating, they're like so into it, and and everyone's communal, swapping partners, all that stuff, and it was a wild time. It was really, really wild.
Are you familiar with Fela Kuti?
Yeah.
Fela Kuti's also had a huge effect on me. I think, again, the effect kind of took time. Yeah. Kind of like this did. Right. Like, I probably didn't listen to it, like put it on and play it loud and listen to it for a year or two. Yeah. I would put it on in the background because that's the way it felt correct. And then after a while listening to it, I was like, let's crank it this time and
really sit down with it. You had to do that on a couple of occasions at least with a record like this.
Yeah. But it's funny what you're mentioning about like dancing and drinking for hours from certain cultures, and then you got Fela Kuti songs. When they're short, they're 10 minutes.
Yeah.
There's like incredible repetition.
Right.
But in those, and probably in your family, there's like sweat and joy and waving the arms around.
All-night party, for sure.
This is the German version.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's sort of devoid of craziness. Yeah. All it has left is the repetition.
Yeah.
You know, which is kind of amusing if you think about it, that all these cultures have this music that's sort of based on repetition, length, and almost forgetting that it's there.
Yeah.
Including this sort of chilly, cold version of it.
Yeah. Huh, that's pretty interesting.
It's just a weird thing that I started to notice about. I started listening to more world music too in general.
Yeah. And
world music in general tends to be interesting if it's made by darker skinned people.
Yeah.
That's just the way it is. Like, I tried listening to some Finnish records. They just didn't do it.
Yeah.
So, there's all these different, but actually there's probably Finnish music that actually is based on the same thing.
Oh yeah.
Just repetition and sort of groove of some kind.
Right. Well, it's kind of like the basis of all like kind of good music is that as soon as you find something that works, some kind of hook, you just keep that hook coming.
Yep.
And like the more it's repeated, the more somebody can kind of get into it. Whether it's more of a dancing thing, like more of a beat that you're following, or whether it's some kind of like hooky groove to kind of get your juices flowing, I guess.
Yeah, actually, I mean, disco is that. Disco
all
is
pop music. It's all hooks, right?
Yeah.
It's all repeat the chorus.
Repeat it. Yeah, it's just a constant beat. So, I think, especially when I wrote music, I was always frustrated because I wanted to tap into the stuff we're talking about now. Mm-hmm. But I'm too westernized.
Yeah.
So everything had to be chord, 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 chord change.
Yeah.
Second part, go back to the first.
Right.
Go back to the second. Guitar solo or some third part.
Right.
And I think for a while I enjoyed that. That's the nature of a lot of punk rock influenced stuff. Mm-hmm. And when I grew up on all the usual suspects: Sabbath, Zeppelin, Bowie, Aerosmith.
Late 60s, early 70s, classic rock stuff, basically.
Yeah, it tended to be stuff that was very song-based.
Yeah.
Or in the traditional American way, song-based. And the group I had before Burma reformed was called the Peer Group.
Oh, okay.
Started off as the song-based stuff. And then there was a few people in the band that sort of liked this sort of repetitive, groovy concept. And as we went along, we started shifting more toward that. And we actually had a couple of 8-10 minute songs that hung on really repetitive bass lines and drum beats. And so I think of that as being sort of, a formative version of Minibeast, I suppose.
Good precursor.
I didn't have it yet, but I was looking for it.
Yeah. That's cool. I actually haven't been able to find any of the peer group. I found a bunch of other things. I found, the Kustomized online. I found Volcano Suns. But that was the one that I didn't get to listen to anything about.
I have stuff around. We probably recorded at least an album's worth of stuff.
Yeah. I guess it just wasn't online. I mean, I use Apple Music to stream, and that wasn't there.
Yeah, I can imagine that it wouldn't be. If I can dig it up, I'll let you have it. Yeah.
Okay.
I'll see if I can find some.
That'd be great, cool. Because I'd love to see what it is that you're kind of comparing them. Because of all the music of your discography, of your catalog that I have listened to, because I've listened to just about all of it now, Minibeast is my favorite, really.
It's my favorite. I mean, it would be because I'm doing it now.
Yeah.
But it is my favorite. And it's funny how things, you sort of grow out of what came before. And I think I wrote maybe 2 or 3 songs in Burma before we broke up.
Yeah.
And so I was coming out of that. And I sort of learned how to write music with those 2 guys. So the Volcano Suns was sort of, if you removed those 2 guys from Burma and threw me all over it was more like a sort of a slapstick version of Burma's sound.
Yeah.
But really did grow out of that.
Yeah. Well, it seemed like a kind of a easy transition.
It was.
I mean, it was basically like you're swapping out band members, basically.
Kind of.
A little similar.
Yeah, and I mean, the 2 writers in Burma were really good. I thought they were great songwriters and really good at sort of juggling melody and noise and stuff. And so I would admit when I was coming out of it, I was like, I like that format.
Yeah. Because it was a little different from your background. Because if you have the background of the classic rock stuff,
right,
it was
Actually,
a new thing.
Some of that sort of came out more in the Suns.
Yeah,
a little less, a little more shouty and sing-songy and sort of, those guys sort of were weaned on Soft Machine and Crimson and the Kinks and stuff like that. And like I said, I was more like a Sabbath later suburban kid. But yeah, I kind of agree. I kept hoping to do something like that, and I think at the in the last few years of Burma being together, I was like, it was starting to burst out. I was like, before I drop, I got to do something that really relates to what I'm listening to. Because I was starting to feel like I wasn't doing that, This
is at the end of the reunion you're talking about?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. So, and I mean, even though Noi was sort of the crack that let the light in, there was so much stuff that I had listened to since that was always heading me in that direction of repetition. And I mean, sometimes it was usually rhythm based, but I think the more important part of it was the repetition. I think I just like stuff that sort of, gets into your brain through
repetition,
hammering over and over.
There's a certain like quality of that like droniness when things are repeated over and over and just kind of.
And there actually are American rock bands and British rock bands that go to that place. I mean, the Velvets and the Stooges.
Oh yeah.
In fact, the one rock band that has always been an intense influence on me, and actually is in Minibeast too, is the Stooges.
Yeah.
Like those 2-chord things, like I think my understanding is before they made their first record, they would play, 10-minute songs where they just repeated a couple of chords over and over.
Yeah.
And John Cale, when he recorded them, he said, let's organize this a little bit.
Let's cut this down a bit, cut out the fat, right?
Yeah, and he actually sort of found songs in those.
Oh, yeah.
But it may be on their second record, that song, We Will Fall.
The Stooges?
Yeah, the real quiet one.
No, because the second record is Funhouse. That one's
maybe it's on the
motherfucker.
first one.
It might be the first one.
It's a long song. It's like 10 minutes long, and it's kind of Indian ambience in the background.
Right.
Iggy just kind of moaning, that. The drummer I play with just beats the shit out of the drums, but the mood of that is like completely connected to Minibeast.
I can see that. Yeah, I can see the connection of both of those. Both Noi here and I know that Noi had an influence on Iggy, so I'm assuming that had an influence on the Stooges. So yeah, that can totally make sense.
Velvet had some songs like that too. I mean, Sister Ray and
right. I don't know the background of them too well as far as like what was influencing Lou Reed to write the way he did, but
Cale came from an avant-garde. He was a violin player, and so he did stuff with early electronic people before the Velvets. And I think I just read this recently where he was trying to get Lou to, those pop songs are nice, but let's make some noise here.
Right,
so I think he was trying to drag him away from his sort of tighter little songs.
Yeah.
There's always some dangerous influence around like that.
Dangerous or just good? Yeah. Dangerous, I guess. Yeah, career killer, maybe something like that. Yeah.
What's that?
Career killing, influence, maybe something along those lines.
Yeah.
But that's pretty insightful to think about it that way now. Yeah, I can definitely hear it. And I want to just bring a little bit of attention to your drummer, Keith. That's his name, Keith, right?
Keith.
He is amazing.
Incredible.
I was floored when I saw you guys perform at, what is it called, Kodo the other night?
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, he blows my mind.
Yeah. You really lucked out finding him. I mean, what was that like, finding him?
Well, the band with Rick Pelletier, Alec Redfern, and Alec's girlfriend Jillian played guitar. The only woman I've ever played with, and I hate that.
Oh.
The feminine influence in rock music, I think, is a really good thing.
Yeah.
And it was interesting because, there's the three dudes, and then she's playing like kind of slide stuff and really like cat sounds and stuff. It was awesome. But anyway, that group broke up. You know Adam Autry.
I loosely know him, yeah.
Okay.
I know Dan better, but yeah.
Yeah. Dan's awesome. I love Dan.
He's an intense guy.
Yeah.
He's great.
Yeah, he's awesome. Anyway, I think Eric Bailey's might have interviewed me for something, and I had made the second Minibeast record, and I was like, do I want to try this again in a group, And I was like, kind of. And I said to Eric, you don't know any musicians that would do music like this, would you? And he said, I would. And so we started playing a little bit. He seemed to get the idea of what I wanted to do. And he knew Adam. Adam came down. Adam's an amazing drummer.
Yes, he is.
The musicians in Providence, the ones I've run into, are astonishing.
Yeah. You've looked at everything.
They're incredible. and sadly, I had sort of, you can only have so many connections in a town. And I think I had sort of reached the end of my workable connections for musical associations in Boston. It felt like it had sort of reached its end anyway. So when we talked about moving down here, I was like, who knows? Maybe I'll find other people to play with. And so that's what we did first, is try to do rock band versions of what were on those first two records.
Yeah.
Which wasn't that easy, because they're so abstract. They're really. I'll give you those records too to check out if you didn't. I don't think you've heard those.
The first Minibeast ones?
Yeah, those two ism ones are the third and fourth.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, I'll give you copies of those.
Okay. Cool.
The first one is very like a blueprint, sketchy kind of thing, but the second one I think actually sort of gets some of the mood of what we do now.
Yeah. Well, I think it's hard to grasp it onto record, right? To what you do, because it's your music is kind of an improvisational basis, right?
Exactly. So improvisational bands are difficult, because if you can only catch one version of the improv,
right?
It's like either this is going to be the version, or you can put 8 versions on one record, I suppose.
Right.
I think Adam moved away.
Okay.
At least for a few months, and we were sort of starting to play regularly, and I was like, we got to at least see if we can find somebody else. And I was 99% sure that I would never find anyone else that wanted to play it, or wanted to play it like I did. And let me see. I think I sort of put out the word to different musicians, and one guy said, I'm playing, but I know a guy that would fit what you're talking about. And I sent him an email, and I said, the general layout is like, Stooges, Can, Fela Kuti, and he emailed back. He said, "Oh, please let me try out." He was like, "I've been," he was like begging me, and I was like,
"Yeah,
really? You want to do this? Okay."
Yeah.
And so he came down, and it was like this guy fell out of the sky. I mean, I suppose he is pulled back slightly to play in Minibeast, because he's very technically proficient, as you can probably tell.
Yeah.
And had I suppose prog rock kind of leanings.
Oh, okay.
Which he can indulge with us.
Yeah.
But I think he kind of figured out how to simplify and bolt things down hard too. When he started playing with us. So yeah, within a really short time, I was like, man, this guy's just incredible.
Yeah.
And completely on the same page as us. So how that happened. He lives in Attleboro. He lives like a few towns away.
Yeah.
Wasn't doing anything. At least is old enough to feel comfortable playing with me. You know, he's. I think he's 50 now.
50?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and it's funny, like, what 50-year-old guy in Attleboro wants to play this kind of music?
That's a really, like, diamond in the rough, just kind of, like, randomness.
It's a bizarre story,
It
you
sure
know?
is, yeah.
It's very strange that...
because I've never even heard of him before. Like, so he's been around for 50 years, where he's been playing...
He played in Providence in a band in the 90s called Haystack Cahoon or something like that.
Oh, okay. I know that name. Yeah.
Kind of an indie rock band.
Yeah. I don't think I've saw them. I don't think I played with them, but I know the name. I've heard it. Yeah.
Yeah, I think they played fairly often.
Yeah, I would say that.
But my impression was, you know, he and his wife, he's an illustrator, and he and his wife had a kid, and so he was sort of, you know,
dying down.
Yeah, in with family life.
Yeah, it happens.
But I mean, this just fit. Well, you know, I'm not that far away. We actually practiced downstairs.
Cool.
So yeah, it was kind of insane, and it's a real solid connection that we have. You know, I think Eric. I don't know for sure, but I think Eric just after a while wanted to play something different.
Yeah.
When he split, we actually, Keith and I went through the same thing. In fact, Keith was worse. He was like, "We'll never find anybody," and I was like, "I found you,"
Right?
You know, so you never know. And Niels was playing with a friend of mine, and it was kind of a part-time band, so they, you know, his time was somewhat free, but he lived up in Boston. He filled in on some shows we already had booked, and at the end of those 3 shows, Keith and I said, we got to ask him. I mean, no one wants to drive from Boston to here for practice, but he said yes. So I got lucky twice.
So he's still in Boston? He still makes that commute?
Yeah, he lives in Somerville.
Oh, jeez.
But I think he does a fair amount of driving around with his job, and I think his mom was in Vermont, so driving here was no big deal to him. And again, you know, I think we're all dealing with something amazing when you find an original band that works really well when you're post 50. Doesn't happen too much.
He's post 50 as well?
He's around, I think he's a little beyond,
Yeah, I can imagine how that might seem like a kind of just a gold mine moment.
Like unattainable grail. How do
you
know, it's something that in general, especially in Boston, like I said, it sort of reached the end of my associations there. And I was trying to picture, like, who do you run into who's somewhat near my age that actually wants to play what we're playing?
Right.
And I did.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, lucky you.
Yeah, lucky me. That's all I can say.
You've been fairly lucky your whole career, I think.
I have. You know, I would have to agree with that.
Yeah. Well, so let me just, for anyone that's listening that doesn't know that we're talking about Minibeast.
Yeah.
That's your newest band.
Yep.
Because obviously you've been in a slew of bands over the past 30 years, 40 years almost. How long has it been? 40 years, I think.
I've been
almost 40 because 79, I'm actually turning 40 this year. So yeah. You've been playing for about 40 years.
Yep.
Shit. Pretty cool. So, and of all those bands, Mission of Burma obviously being a huge, influential, and legendary punk rock band. I don't know how much you like hearing that, but...
In one way or the other, I suppose, yeah.
Well, I mean, so I think it's very strange because... I don't know. People are going to get mad at me for saying this, but I've never really been a huge fan of Mission of Burma.
I'm not mad at you.
Okay.
I understand it.
Yeah.
there's some weird things about it. One thing, most of the bands that sort of blow me away in a really like a really distinct way tend to have, if not one writer, one sound, one overall overarching sound.
Right.
That's one thing that I don't really think is there in Burma. I think there's a weird diffuse quality to it.
Okay.
Like it's and I think that's what some people really like, that it's sort of I mean, they're both the main writers. They have slightly different styles, but they kind of mesh. Mm-hmm. And I guess you could say there's not a strong central personality to Mission of Burma music.
Yeah.
Well, I'm curious, what's your problem with it, or where it leaves you a little?
It just never really, grabbed me. You know, I mean, and I think that a lot of that has to do with the lack of ever having been able to see a performance, because I feel like I've been doing that a lot lately. I feel like I've missed out on a lot of bands, and so now with like the streaming music being so accessible,
yep.
I've been going into the catalog, being in of my mind, saying like, what did I need to listen to? What did I need to listen to? And I was just like, I've totally missed the Cramps. I got to listen to the Cramps. So I put on their first record, thinking like, this is where you got to start, and I'm just like, this sucks. Like, this is not a great band.
Incredible live band.
and I know, and I'm listening to it the whole time, thinking like, I wish I could have seen this band, because then I know I would have developed a relationship with this band and know how wild they were, and know that I loved being there and seeing that it would make me want to listen to the record more.
Yeah, that's an issue. I do think back in the day, we were thought of, especially when we began, as incredibly noisy.
Yeah.
Which is kind of funny, because those records are somewhat textured and smooth. I mean, they aren't really, especially by modern standards, they aren't especially noisy.
No.
But live, there were some people that just hated it so much because they viewed it as just complete noise.
Right.
Like literally like Metal Machine music noise, you know? And that may say how straight a lot of the punk rock and rock music was in general at the time.
Yeah.
Like a band like Devo, who's actually pretty crazy and noisy, were actually clean, and you could hear all the parts.
Concise.
Concise, yeah. Very stripped down in a way. I think we were, the guy that ran the label we were on, he had put out a couple of garage rock 45s, and he came to see us, and he was really intrigued by us, and we couldn't figure out why. We thought, like, we liked the records he put out. I think at the time, maybe, it was like poppy punk stuff, Neighborhoods, and this band, The Inflictors. I think he put out The Liars around the time that we did their garage rock band.
Yeah.
Good stuff, but nowhere near like us. And to make a 45, now this is in the days when people, recorded on 2-track with everything in the red, and you put out a quick, 100 singles, and you blasted it on a system so it sounded even more like shit. And he had us do like, I don't know, 20 takes of each song, and kept them like and he'd go. He sort of grew up on the Yardbirds and the Kinks and Beatles and sort of British Invasion, like sort of really looked at that stuff as sort of a template for how you made great rock music.
Yeah.
So he viewed us somehow, don't ask me how, through that lens.
Yeah.
Of like a band that could conceivably make a single that was catchy.
Right.
And initially we were sort of turned off by that, but then when we figured, what's the harm in making a single? And by the time the single was done, it was very, in a way, it didn't sound anything like us. It was us, but it was a super refined version of us.
Yeah.
Academy Fight Song and Max Ernst were the songs. I mean, and by that point, we really liked him. He liked us a lot personally. And so then we made an EP with him. And same thing. It was also, it was some pretty gnarly sounds we had, but he managed to make it sound somewhat textured and pleasant. And he did, we got a lot of local and national radio play with these records that I can't imagine we would have gotten otherwise.
Yeah. So
it was a strange way that stuff happened.
Yeah.
Yeah, because early on we were not just noisy in a punk rock sense, but pretty dissonant. And then we added the guy that did sound and tape loops. So then there's another bunch of sounds coming in added to this noise that's already there.
Yeah.
So live, we were always a pretty different band than we were on those records.
Right.
But I do agree that I think without Rick Hart, who knows, maybe people would know who Mission of Burma was. I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Huh.
But the other thing I found after I got out of Burma and I got into the Volcano Suns was, like a lot of bands I love, kind of funny. Like absurdist. Just ridiculous. Like, I think the idea of playing rock music to anyone in the Volcano Suns was such a silly idea that we always just treated it like sort of a gag, like sort of a noisy joke or something. Yeah. And Burma was almost utterly devoid of humor. I mean, and that's the other thing I mentioned about. I mean, for instance, with the Ramones, there was such a unified. I mean, they dressed alike too, but still, there was just such a Ramones sound, or the Pistols was Johnny Rotten, or I think that those are the two things that, if I was a listener of Burma, that I might find a little flat.
Yeah.
That it didn't have a lot of humor to it.
Right. And
that it was kind of a diffuse sound, and that there wasn't a single voice sort of promoting it.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true. I guess because everyone kind of had a part in writing and even in singing songs,
which was great for the drummer guy who didn't know how to write. It was terrific for me because it sort of invited me into that process.
Yeah.
I liked that we had that outside sound that was there. The tape loops were there sometimes not. They were always a little different. We tended to play the songs a little bit different from time to time, and that stayed with me. I mean, that's been pushed way up front in Minibeast, where I mean, there are songs that are 4 minutes one night and 8 minutes the next night.
Yeah, it just depends on how you feel.
Yeah, and so I guess ultimately, the things that I've liked about these bands along the way, I try to keep. The things I didn't care for, push to the curb.
Right, makes sense. We need to get into side 2 of this record. Okay, I wanted to just touch on some really simple, quick facts things. Where did you start playing music? Like, what was your first instrument? And
Me personally?
Yeah.
Drums.
Drums was your first instrument?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. Oh, by far. I'm still a weirdly incompetent guitar player. I can make sounds with almost anything.
Okay. Yeah.
but as far as playing it in the traditional sense, I've never had. I chafe against that, you know. So the drums are the perfect instrument for me.
Yeah.
Just like beat bash, you know. Like it sort of went with my mindset.
Yeah.
I think I played, you know, in cover bands in down in the basements that did the kind of stuff that I mentioned, Zeppelin and Aerosmith and such. I think when punk rock started happening in Boston, like a lot of people my age, I think we started hearing about punk rock through Cream magazine. Do you know the magazine?
I mean, I think it went out of print by the time I was born, but
it's been gone forever. But
yeah.
There was initially it was sort of a wise ass sarcastic take on rock in general. Then glam and glitter rock started coming in, and then you could start to feel the early punk rock stuff was starting to make a little noise, and they had like a New York column in it.
Oh, okay.
And they started talking about the Ramones and Blondie and Suicide, all that kinds of stuff. And shortly after that, I think the Boston Phoenix kind of filtered down to the Cape, and the back of it in the listings, I'd see, oh, punk rock is an hour away. And so I started going up with my girlfriend to the Rat, and we saw the Cars, the Dead Boys, and there was always local Boston bands opening, and I was kind of shocked that like the local Boston bands were good. I mean, they were doing original music. There was no like apology, like, oh, we'll do some covers too. There was never anything like that. So it was this mindset of like original bands unapologetically doing original music. And then there was always kind of a prog rock noisy wing to the art rocky wing to the punk rock scene that I just kept gravitating toward that. I like the garage rock stuff, but then I went to this show with a band called the Malls, Molls.
That's the band you ended up joining.
I played drums in that band.
Okay.
Later.
Yeah.
But it was the Malls and this band called Moving Parts.
Oh.
And that was Roger and Clint and a drummer named Bob and a keyboard player named Eric. And both of those bands were very, very art rock. Moving Parts had sort of a little electronic vibe to it. The Malls lead singer looked like Fidel Castro quite a bit. Beard, glasses.
Yeah.
And played a bassoon.
Huh. Weird.
So both those bands kind of knocked me out because they were just miles away from. I mean, most of the Boston bands were kind of influenced by the Modern Lovers or the Stooges and Velvets kind of stuff, the more conservative side, and actually a lot of Nuggets style
garage rock
stuff,
psychedelic. Oh, okay.
But these two bands, I was like, now that's pretty cool shit. And then I'm reading the Phoenix and the Malls don't have a drummer. They're looking for a drummer. I thought there wasn't a chance in hell, but I went up and tried out, and they liked me enough to to have me play. So we did a single. You know those Killed by Death compilations? In the 90s, a lot of these sort of rare early punk singles from various towns were comped on these Killed by Death Volume 1, Volume 2, whatever.
Okay.
And the Mall single was on that one side of it. So the band got some attention much later because of that.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, ironically, the song was kind of punk rock, even though we were a pretty strange band. And then those guys were college buddies, and I think I was always an outsider, so eventually they got their drummer back or something like that. And when they kicked me out, I had gone to see the Moving Parts a few other times, and I was like, the bass player and guitar player are fucking awesome. And I actually tracked down Clint. I found out he worked at a bar in Cambridge, and I said, like, what are you guys doing now? Because I know you're not in that band anymore. And he said, well, we're thinking about, me and Roger are thinking about something that's a little more guitar heavy, a little less sort of Tinker Toy Devo.
Yeah.
And so, they tried me out 3 times. They clearly weren't sure about it at first, this kid from the suburbs, you know. Huh. And eventually they were like, yeah, cool. And so that's how that hookup happened.
Oh, wow. Weird. And so drums, and so then you didn't learn another instrument until after Burma had ended? Or you kind of tinkered with things every now and then?
Yeah, I was just a tinkerer. I think when I wrote stuff with them and in the Volcano Suns, it was just sort of like plunking out notes on a guitar. And in Kustomized, I actually played guitar. But it was mainly chordy stuff. And that was at that time, that was almost like a retro rock band for me. I think it was like, in a way, it was really simple songs. I think I was listening to like the Trogs and really simple British Invasion stuff and psych stuff at the time. So I was kind of into just a really
straightforward, like
very simple.
Yeah.
Not necessarily straightforward, but very simple.
Yeah.
Really like no fancy stuff. And so that was before I played guitar in the peer group too. But with Minibeast, I kind of leveled the playing field. I said, like, you know what? You're never going to learn how to play guitar, so don't worry about it. Just don't play it. Just use it.
Right. Yeah, use it for more of sounds and textures.
Pretty much, yeah. And then every now and then, you know, when you want that, throw in a chord, a power chord or something. But I remember when I first made Minibeast recordings, I played it to somebody and said, so this is not done, right? There's no guitar on it. And I said, there's not going to be any guitar on it. And so I realized at that point that I was like really into the idea of the bass and drums being the propellant.
Right.
And because I wasn't part of that anymore, that meant that I could be this little sound grumbling guy, you know, which I finally went, I'm home. This is what I was supposed to be doing.
Yeah.
You know, because like I said, I think the idea of being a musician, even though I've always loved it and I've clearly done it for a long time, I chafe against the idea. I find musicians are pretentious. That's a ridiculous thing to say, but
it's true.
I think they can be. Let's put it this way: it's really easy to be pretentious.
Yeah.
I think if you're trying to step out of the norms of rock music and do things a little outside, and I've never, even though I really appreciate Niels and Keith, who are extremely technically proficient, I suppose them being that technically proficient allows me not to be.
Yeah, I guess that's true. I mean, it works out really well with like the way it's going. And,
I think
and I really like it.
We hit a balance at a certain point, and we're like, yeah, this actually now makes sense. But I did have to sort of. I don't want to say abandon this idea of being like an actual musician, but just contort it to me, conform it to me, rather than me try to conform to it. Because I think whenever I've done that, except for I think I was a good drummer in my way, and I think I got fairly technically proficient. But it's a funny thing. Even when I did that, I took a weird joy in kind of not playing like a constantly in beat. Mm-hmm. Like I mean, Burma recordings, I think I would go out of the way to make sure it was all somewhat metronomic, but Burma always like moved the tempo around. And they did too. So it was a good drum job for me in that I could actually sabotage it slightly while I did it.
Yeah. Yeah. Keep it lively, huh?
Yeah.
So I'm sorry. Let me just interrupt you for a minute. Because I wanted to get into some of the vinyl discussion. Because so we were here featuring Noi. I'm going to keep on trying to say it wrong. Noi. And this is what you have here is a reissue of some sort. You don't know exactly what reissue it is. You don't remember you remember when you got it.
Yeah, I got it in the 90s. My the blue and orange copy I was talking about that I'm pretty sure was a Brain original. Yeah. One of my ex-girlfriends confiscated that. I think she still has it.
Damn it. Like, when did they become popular? I mean, they definitely have a significance now, more so than they ever did.
Agreed. Lots of things are like that, Yeah. See, to me, it's the kind of thing I would have stumbled into at some point. Yeah. On purpose, but I like that I happened to stumble into it accidentally. I mean, that was, like I said, that was one of the earlier records that sort of opened up the idea about what you could do in a rock band.
Yeah. So what got you into vinyl? Because you, from what I realized or learned about you, is that you became a seller at some point. Like, you were actually working in a record store.
Yeah. That was that was a really great education.
I bet.
Let's see, I think it was around the time the Volcano Suns broke up. Excuse me, a friend of mine worked at a place in Boston called Mystery Train. Mm-hmm. And I think I always kind of wanted to work in a record store because is there a more cliche job for a musician?
No.
I think not.
It's almost a rite of passage.
It is. It's like, it's a given. You have to fall ass backwards into a record store at some point.
Yeah. Yeah. I only just started now. Yeah. I'm almost 40 now, so. It took me a while. Oh, there you go. Sorry.
And, yeah. Actually, what did I do before that? I worked in a video store. It's like all of a piece.
The next best job.
Yeah. And when I started working there, I think there was constant bonding daily on one band or the other. And we were all, every time a record came in, I think we were all like, like people that were in the desert looking for water. You'd see anything you had not seen before and you just wanted to know.
Yeah.
And it happened to the other people there too, but I think that got me in this mindset of being really curious about stuff I didn't already know.
Yeah.
Which tends to be sort of the opposite of the way most people are about music, and maybe even about movies or art or anything else. They get, like, I know this, so I love this.
Right.
And this was about finding a new love every day, like a new thing to obsess over. So, that is, I think, where I started getting back into the format again, because at that point, I don't think I had many records, and the records I had were all like rock and punk, and I don't know, probably that many or something. A lot of stuff was actually being reissued in the 90s.
On vinyl?
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah,
weird.
it was the first real reissue boom, where like lots of stuff that were hard to find in any format were being reissued on vinyl, but also on CD for the first time.
Right.
And two things that became somewhat hipstery were lounge stuff and soundtracks. And I've always loved movies, so the soundtrack thing was sort of an easy thing for me to glom onto.
Yeah.
These records right here are all soundtracks.
Oh, really? Wow.
And actually, I've been there's a great label that's putting out lots of old like Italian slasher movie soundtracks and stuff like that called Mondo.
Oh yeah.
New stuff, and they're like beautiful packaging and remastered. They sound great, and both those forms of music were so different from psych and rock and punk, in that rock and punk and psych all have like relatively sort of hard edges and beginnings and endings, and like I was talking about before, that sort of rock music with defined structures, you know. Soundtracks, especially the records themselves, when they're detached from the images,
Right.
are like listening to clouds or something in general. They're so formless.
Yeah.
Because they're there to support images.
Right.
A lot of lounge and there's some very strange easy listening and lounge records that were documented in a couple of books. They put out a whole series of books. Some of them were about, one was called Incredibly Strange Movies. And then they put out 2 volumes of Incredibly Strange Research. That was the company. They were a San Francisco company, and they put out two books, Incredibly Strange Music Volumes 1 and 2. And they had interviews with some people that I knew as a rock person, Jello Biafra and the people from the Cramps, because they were collectors of these bizarro lounge records that sometimes were as adventurous as any rock record. I mean, like, just bizarre sonic stuff. So between the soundtracks and that stuff, my sort of old ideas about And this is also when techno and sort of more abstract hip hop was coming in too. So all these things kind of coagulated together to me.
Yeah.
And sort of impressed me with this idea that like rock music is only part of the story. There's this whole like big batch of sound that is on vinyl records that doesn't have any of these rules. There's no lead solo. There's no, there's no lyric that you have to hang on to.
Right.
There may be nothing for you to hang on to, but it's still a pleasant experience to listen to it.
Yeah.
So, I think my record store experience was super formative in that sense. That it just took me. It didn't take me away from rock music because we were always playing rock music in the store, but it just impressed upon me that's just one little section,
right?
So when I let all that other stuff in, I think that's when Minibeast started to birth in my head.
Yeah.
Wow, it'd be cool to have a rock band that actually incorporated some of those things.
Yeah. Huh. That's pretty interesting. So now. You started working at a record store when? What year was that?
Probably 92.
Okay. So this was after Burma had dissolved.
Yeah. In fact, it was after the Volcano Suns were over.
Okay. And then, so what got you into selling records now online? I mean, just some old familiarity, like records.
Yeah, it's something I
you look
semi know how to do.
Yeah.
I'm a fairly useless member of society in most ways, I don't really, I think I've, it's such an old school thing now, but the type. I mean, it's the record store, musician, vinyl, it all sort of sits in the same societal region,
Right.
I suppose it's one thing I picked up because I found it genuinely interesting to know why these two records look exactly the same, but this one's worth $150 and this one's worth $5.
Right.
So I think that stuff was relatively interesting to me.
Yeah. Well, I was going to actually ask you about that because so with your experience being in bands and being in a very notable and successful band to a degree, I guess you could say at least, like Burma's records, let's just say, like their first pressings of even those first singles command a pretty high pay, right?
They don't really.
They're modest.
I've sold a few recently.
Oh, okay. Compared to what they were sold for when they originally were released.
Yeah. And let's see. I think I got a couple sealed copies of the first couple 12-inch records you put out. I might have sold those for $50. See, we're one of the most reissued bands ever.
Yeah.
Compared to our fan base.
Yeah.
I think, for one thing, the guy that put out our records was always very savvy about keeping them in print.
Okay.
But also keeping legal possession of the material with him and us. So he always tried to work out if there wasn't a maximum deal that he could work out to keep it in print, he would keep it not in print for a while. Then when it's like when we reformed, we had people we knew at Matador Records, and they were like, if you make a new studio record, we'll put it out, which they did for one and then a second one. The second one that we put out is one of the better Burma records to me. Mm-hmm. It's really interesting. It's called the Obliterati.
Oh, okay.
It came out in probably 2004 or 5.
Yeah.
But then after that, they reissued these deluxe editions with DVDs from back in the day, like all these nice booklets, bonus tracks. I mean, it couldn't have been a more deluxe treatment for a band that still not that many people knew. So I think all those records may have come out 4 times total. That's ridiculous.
So it's kind of like an overabundance of the material in the manufactured format.
Well, actually, not that much material. It was just put out over and over.
Right, exactly. This is because it's a resaturation of like the same catalog, basically.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
So I guess maybe Mission of Burma is not a great example of that, and like why the initial pressings are more valuable than the reissues.
I mean, they still have some value.
Oh yeah,
but the value is way undercut when there's so many versions of the same thing.
Right.
You know.
Huh. That's pretty interesting. But so then another kind of big question that's always in my mind that I never really get to ask people is like, so being in a band like that, like let's just say Mission of Burma reform and are releasing a record with Matador being one of the most successful independent record labels. What is the denomination of like the first pressing that they'll put out for your record? Do you know like the number of like how many they would press initially and like let's say the Obliterati, how many records were pressed?
You know, I bet it was under 10,000.
Yeah.
Because, that's the thing. It's probably like a lot of bands. I mean, for an old band, I suppose a fair amount of people know generally what it is and might know a few songs. But the fan base is small. Mm-hmm. Even when we reformed and maybe, it was expanded and suddenly thousands of people could see us that had never seen us before.
Right.
So, and whenever you go to shows in Europe or do an American tour, you bring records along and sell them at shows. So that increases it some too. But, it's sort of a hard truth that our fan base just wasn't that big.
Right.
It just wasn't that big, And I think, again, it expanded a little along the way, but I'm trying to think of some. Stereolab, for instance, is far, far more huge.
Yeah.
Or I'm trying to think of somebody that was big. The Jesus Lizard, like the big 90s bands just were so much bigger than Burma.
Right.
I think, we're benefiting in a way. Yeah, I think we're benefiting in some way from being this piece of history thing.
Yeah.
Right. So, and also going back to what you said about not being, not feeling it with Burma.
Yeah.
I just don't think that you're not that unusual.
Okay.
I think,
I just didn't want to be offensive to you.
No,
but
I don't find it so at all. I think every band I've been in has been, for better or worse, an acquired taste.
Yeah.
I don't even think that's a bad thing.
No, I mean, you can't please everybody. For sure. I mean, you're lucky enough to have a career in it.
Right.
I mean, that's really the gist of it is that like,
yep.
If anyone listens at all, that's good. So
true. And there's so much stuff that people have gone apeshit over in the indie world and in the rock world that like just didn't touch me in the least. That I can relate to that idea. Nobody likes everything.
No, absolutely not.
And they shouldn't.
You can't. It's too much stuff. So we should get back into the record.
Yep.
Because we're getting into side 2. I'm not even going to try to pronounce the names of these songs.
I know one's called Hallo Gallo. I don't know which one that is.
I'm not German. I'm really not good with the German accent.
Yeah.
So let's just give it a shot. This is a great record to do a lot of talking over.
Yeah, true.
There's a lot of space.
Yeah.
But so getting back into your record collection and like what you sell, like how do you like? Well, first of all, where do you go look? Like, how do you find your records? Like, how much? Like, do you crate dig all the time, or like, are you constantly out searching?
Well, crate dig is the right word because I love to do that. If I see a box of records I don't know but have interesting covers, I like start hallucinating. I'm feeling so good. Let's see. I remember I used to go to. I've always gone to thrift stores and flea markets. Can't, if you look for records, you can't avoid those places. You have to go at some point.
Right.
I actually still find things in those places, I think because my knowledge about not just rock and punk, but, like I said, when I got into lounge records, people don't really pay much attention to those in thrift stores. And, a lot of them are crappy music and don't sell. So, I don't pay attention to those. But there are ones that do, and those slip through the net. Occasionally I'll go into a Savers and, there's Joy Division, Rocky Erickson and 13th floor elevators. I don't know what it was, but it was like all together.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow.
It happens.
Sometimes,
It doesn't happen much, but it happens.
No.
All these guys I found in one place. And, I'm not a Depeche Mode fan myself, but, they...
Oh, but Depeche Mode is ridiculous.
There are some, weird color vinyl things.
Oh, wow.
They're all German 45s or something,
Wow. That's crazy.
And they were all together. I mean, again... That's when you're kind of excited when you find stuff like that.
Oh yeah, for sure.
When I was in Boston, I think I always I adopted this weird concept that my boss who taught me about vinyl didn't really glom onto, but I figure if you bought something cheap, then if you sold it at, even for $1 more, you made something.
Right.
And so I was always thinking in those terms that whatever you buy, make sure you can get twice as much.
Right.
Yeah. And after a while, I sort of put aside that idea, especially like if you can buy a $5 record and make 50 on it, that's a lot better than making 2.
Sure.
So then I sort of relaxed my buying viewpoint and occasionally pay more for records if I think I can get a lot more for this.
Right.
And also, there are things I've sold 5 times on eBay. That's 6th time. Nope. It's its lifespan kind of faded,
Okay.
as a viable thing.
Unless, of course, it's Fleetwood Mac Rumors, in which case you could sell that fucking thing all day long, every day.
It's funny. Of course, the cliche is your parents would always say, we have a Beatles record. It's got to be worth, $150.
Right.
And you go, well, there's, 8 trillion of those in the universe.
Right.
So not necessarily.
Right.
And actually, all records, no matter if it's made on a private label, they're mass produced.
Right.
No one makes one.
Right. Yeah.
So there's always a bunch of them. It depends on. I mean, like James Brown records in general are expensive because everybody partied with those, and they're completely like
torn up.
Yeah, they're just destroyed. Like
Yeah.
people would play them and they'd be dancing around, throw them over on the floor, put on another one. You know, so there are some records that actually end up being worth money just because they're played so much.
Or the condition of them has been preserved so well, and that's a rarity.
Yeah.
Yeah, right.
Yeah. Of course, there are rare Beatles pressings that people still pay for too. But
Right.
I think people do forget that, like, this is mass production. This is like a toothbrush in some ways. It's something that's made and used, you know. And if you happen to be lucky enough to find one in good shape, then it has some value.
Right. So what was can you tell me a little bit about like your greatest find, like for your own personal collection, something that you weren't doing for business related searching?
For resale?
No, for yourself, like something that you kind of stumbled across, like your greatest find for your own collection that you were like happiest about.
You know, oddly enough, it tends to be some of the loungy stuff because it's just so hard to find like a super rare, like if I find a punk rock record or a rock record that's super rare, I tend to want to get money for it, so I tend to turn it over.
Yeah.
There are sometimes, like, even when I really want it, I'll just turn it over and sell it and say, well, maybe you'll find it again. In the meantime, you get a CD of it or whatever.
Right.
Geez, I can't think of anything in particular. You know, actually, a funny one that I remember. I knew that John Kerry, the presidential candidate, had played on like a frat rock, garage rock kind of record when he was in boarding school or something like that. And
what
it was, kind of a surfy thing.
Really?
And I found a kind of a scratched up copy of it. I think it was $4 at Newbury Comics. And he's on the back. Yeah, you can tell it's him. It's got his name and everything. But I guess somebody didn't notice it. So I got that home and I ended up selling it for $400.
Whoa, that's crazy.
And it was funny that I didn't find it in a thrift store. I found it in Newbury Comics.
Yeah.
You know,
right?
where you think they would have been looking for things like that.
Weird. Well, it must have been obscure enough. I mean, what band was that he was in?
God, I don't remember.
Can't remember the name.
No.
But it was a band, right?
Yeah, it was a band.
So he was just a member, and you see his photo on the back.
Yes.
And now this is a young John Kerry.
Yes.
Like, obviously not the kind of John Kerry that everyone's going to think
Correct.
about.
I can see how it would slip through the net.
Yeah.
I understand that, but there was an irony to it because most record stores, that's one thing they just do not want to allow. Like, if I can get $8 for this, I don't want to sell it for $7.50. You know, right. They want to make every penny they can.
Yeah.
Actually, there was two records by this group called the Incredible Bongo Band, and I think some big hip hopper had sampled it because it has these beautiful echoey drums, these big. You can see it almost screams hip-hop at you right away. And I think they had even reissued the records. And I found them in a fellow record store when I worked at Mystery Train, a place nearby. And the guy who priced records, when he looked at them when I bought them, kind of had this expression like, did I miss something with these? and I think later on he said, like, I can't believe you knew that, and I didn't. And they were pretty expensive. I did keep those.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
It's tough, isn't it? Like when you find them and you're like, oh, I could really, like, this would be nice in my collection, and then.
Well, you know what? I don't, even though it looks like I do, I don't romanticize records.
Okay.
I don't care for that. I don't really like it. There are people that are so fetishistic about it. You know, like, I have this copy that's pristine, and I'm just not. To me, it's a tool. I love to listen to them.
Right.
You know.
Yeah.
I maybe it's because I worked in records. I worked after Mystery Train. Some young guys took over that store and changed the name to Smash City.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, one interesting thing is, you know who Shepard Fairey is?
Yeah.
One of my buddies there was kind of friends with him because they were both doing sort of graphic T-shirt art type stuff at the time.
Oh, okay.
And he got him to do a show at that store. So he was selling a bunch of stuff that I was an idiot not to buy something, you know? In fact, Shepard actually did something for Burma. The Obliterati record, so indulgent. It's so ridiculous, but they put out 8 12-inch records, and each one had 2 songs on one side and an etching of one of his art pieces on the other side.
Wow.
I think that still garners a little thing and a little bit of money, and that was a mid-2000s thing.
Wow.
It's not even that old.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I've always liked his stuff. I always kick myself for not buying one of his pieces at that show. And like, what a kickoff for their record store. There was a line around the block.
Yeah.
Mystery Train was out of everybody's mind right away. Wow, this Smash City place is cool.
Yeah.
And I worked there until that store closed. Then I worked at Looney Tunes in Cambridge for 4 or 5 years. And I think it was after that we moved down here, and I just started doing the online stuff.
Yeah. So now, what brought you to Rhode Island, or Providence, I guess?
A cheaper way to buy a house.
There you go.
Yeah.
Oh, it makes a lot of sense. I mean, that makes too much sense, really. I mean, you were living in Boston for all those years?
I mean, let's see, when the Looney Tunes in Cambridge closed, and I had been with my girlfriend maybe a year, 2 years, and I really couldn't afford my apartment because I couldn't find another job that really worked. I was still making money from Burma, but so this is probably 2008, 7, somewhere in there.
Yeah.
And so I moved in with her. We had a place in the Lower Alston, which is, you know, student ghetto city.
Oh, yeah.
And, you know, people having parties upstairs, and then those people moved out, and these 2 kind of elderly professor types moved in, and they were upset when we had the TV on late. And after a while, we were like, maybe it's time to think about somewhere else.
Yeah.
And she really wanted to buy a house, and I don't think we even looked up there. I think we said right away, like, let's see what it's like in Providence, because she had lived here before.
Oh, okay.
She had lived not far from Wickenden, that area.
Oh, okay.
And so we looked at a few houses, and they weren't quite right. We looked at this one, and we both said, "This is it."
Cool.
Yeah, it was a good move too, for a lot of reasons.
Right. Yeah, I would say it's a pretty good mood. I mean, it makes a lot of sense. I mean, I love living here, and I think that it makes sense for so many reasons, not just income-wise, because it's just affordable for the most part, but just this location, you're so centralized. I mean, Boston's just about an hour away. New York's about 3, almost 4 hours.
Yeah, New York's not far.
Connecticut, if you dare, for whatever reason.
Right.
Maine's 3 hours.
Yep.
New Hampshire, Vermont. It's all like super close.
It is.
So, I mean, it makes a lot of sense, because if you can afford cheap rent, cheap mortgage, and then be able to travel, especially for being in a band, because you can hit all these spots in all these cities. It makes too much sense to me, really.
Well, we were always surprised more people didn't make an exodus from Boston.
Right.
Yeah, that was one thing. And I think it's also it's nice to be in a place where you can drive to a club and park. Or go to a restaurant where there's not like a line outside,
right?
And there's actually like lots of good restaurants here.
Oh yeah.
There's one that we go to religiously. It's a Peruvian restaurant.
Oh, Los Andes?
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh
Bolivian.
My God.
Bolivian Peruvian, yes.
Oh my! So you know that place?
Oh yeah.
Oh, it's incredible.
Yeah, the owners are like friends and of family. Like my mom knows everyone. My mom knows every Bolivian person in like a 30-mile radius.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, it's ridiculous.
Yeah, that place is just unbelievable. I think we want to go to other restaurants, but whenever we go out, we always go there.
Yeah,
it's just so good.
Do you like the salteñas? Have you tried the salteñas?
No.
They're these little like handheld meat pie things.
From there?
Oh, fucking yeah.
Okay.
So good. I could live. That's my desert island food.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's like, you mean to eat something every day? That I can do that.
Oh, that's funny.
Yeah, it's great. So good.
Yeah, I don't think I've had those.
Try it next time you're there. It's probably an appetizer. It's probably like $2 a piece or something. $5 maybe. I don't know. But
yeah, there's an appetizer that has like all seafood in it, and it's kind of it kind of cooks in citrus kind of stuff,
like the ceviche or something.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah.
Oh my God.
Yeah. So the I think the thing about their restaurant is that it's delicious, of course, but it's more of like a Nuovo style Andean food, like the real traditional stuff. Like if you actually go to those countries, is a lot more stripped down. It's a lot more basic.
I could see that.
But it's great. It's very good. Yeah. I would go there for sure.
And they always make it a nice experience too.
They're very pleasant.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah, they're. I mean, I think the one thing that gets me down is like, I did like all those years in Boston because I sort of like the way it's based around the young. Mm-hmm. Like as I got older, I had to keep up. I sort of like, I actually like the last 6 years I was there, I wasn't driving, so I was always on a bike. And I don't find this place a good bike city.
No.
And I'm older now too. It's a little difficult for that, so I kind of miss that.
Yeah.
And the traffic and the population is so much older than Boston.
Yeah.
It's really noticeable to me.
Yeah.
I've sort of like gotten used to it now that I've been here so long, but initially it was a little like, aren't there any people like under 60 in this place, Whereas like everyone's under 30 in Boston.
Yeah.
It just makes things move.
Yeah. Well, I think it depends on where you are, because we have so many colleges here, and I feel like when I go into the east side of Providence proper, like the whole like downtownish area, it's obscene, like how many young kids are around. I think the opposite. I'm just like, are there any old dudes around this place?
Funny.
But I mean, it's a blessing and a curse. I mean, like, the college kids, I guess, are good for the city for the most part. They definitely drove those prices up, though, down there.
Yeah,
that's for sure. But over here is nice. I like this area.
Yeah. I'm real glad we did it. I like it.
So one other thing that I was thinking about that, not to go back to the Burma thing, but there was one thing in particular that stuck out in my mind that I would really like to ask you, which was, so that band is what is actually so influential, really. How do you feel about it, like the music that Burma had made, making such an influence and an impact upon like a new generation that has influenced another generation? It's like,
it's a few on now.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
I think I had more awareness of that when we reformed.
Right.
There's always sort of like I mean, it's funny, like, reunions usually last like a tour.
Yeah.
We were together for 13 years. And we were together like 3 years the first time around.
Yeah.
So, bands would tell us, they're like, "Oh man, you're a huge influence on us," and you'd listen to the music and go, "How'd that happen?" How do we fit in there? I don't really see that. But that's fine too. There's plenty of music that influences me that you wouldn't hear in my music, so that's not necessary. I'm glad it has some impact to people. Beyond that, I don't know what to think about it.
Yeah.
But it's kind of like when something is rediscovered, I kind of always want to say the way you reacted to it is no shock to me, and I don't take so my connection to it is it's personal, but it's not like you put down something I was part of. I don't even relate to it that way anymore, and I didn't when we were playing again. It was more just like, oh, this is a band I'm in at this point. Mm-hmm. It gets hard to know how other people feel about it.
Right. But what does it feel like to you just to have these people come up to you and tell you that you were inspiration to them?
Beyond it being flattering,
Yeah.
It's nice. It's nice to know that somebody gives a shit,
Yeah. Regardless, I guess, regardless of the span or the scope of your music, the impact of it, as if anyone comes up to you and says, "Hey, I love what you do," it feels good.
But in all honesty, I'd much rather have them say that about what I do at the present.
Yeah.
So every band I've been in, I feel an emotional connection to, but that's the past, and so I want to hope that. I think again, I'm just happy that I'm playing in a band that like actually gives me a lot of creative juice. Most people my age are lucky to be playing, like some covers down at, the local bar, and I'm actually playing exactly the music I want to play in a way more than I did before.
Right.
So,
yeah,
it's all gravy,
All right. Well, I'd just like to say thank you for doing this first and foremost. I love the new band. And I'm not saying that just to stroke your ego. It
Sounds
really was
good.
Great. It's really great. I mean, I saw you guys play live, and I've been telling everyone since, is just like, you got to go see them.
Oh, I appreciate
when you have an opportunity, because I was just like, it was one of those experiences that, for me, I'm a very subdued person, if you couldn't tell. I don't move much. I don't talk much, really. And that show was like getting me into it.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, it was just like, there was like I could tell from everyone else around me that there was this just inescapable groove happening.
Cool.
Like everyone was kind of like getting into it. So yeah, it's good. Congratulations on the new band. I love it.
Thank
you
much.
for the records.
You know, it's funny. With the previous two guys in the rhythm section, it was good, but I feel like it sort of, we've got it now.
I think so.
I don't know how long it'll last. You know, you never know. Any group can break up tomorrow, but I do feel like the pieces are correct now.
Yeah, I would say so. I agree. Peter, thank you.